I'm Ruby. Standing outside the police station, the weight in my chest feels different, not lighter, not heavier, but sharp. I've just filed a report against my own family, something I never thought I'd do. The night air is cool against my flushed cheeks, and as I walk to my car, I know this is just the beginning of the end of a long-standing nightmare. It all started when I walked into my parents' living room one evening. The air was thick with an unspoken expectation. I sat on the edge of the old leather sofa, my knees pressed together, my eyes scanning the circle of familiar yet now menacing faces. My brother Ethan leaned back, arms crossed, looking nonchalant. Aunt Vivian clutched her wine glass as if it were a lifeline, and my cousin Lily played with her phone, waiting for the drama to unfold. In the center, my mother, Amelia, sat upright, her hands folded neatly. She cleared her throat, a signal for everyone to listen. "You're part of this family, Ruby," she said, her voice cold and authoritative. "It's time you paid your share." I thought I'd misheard. Then my father, Henry, chimed in, nodding gravely. "Half your salary. That's how we've always done it. The one who earns the most supports the family." I stared at them, trying to keep my composure. Half my salary? I worked long hours in a high-stress job, analyzing market trends and meeting deadlines. And now, they wanted me to hand over half my hard-earned paycheck as if it were a simple chore. Amelia's gaze locked onto mine. "It's family tradition, dear. We take care of each other." But I knew this was different. I remembered when I was 23, paying for Ethan's college books when his part-time job fell short. I paid Aunt Vivian's dental bills when her insurance didn't cover it, and I often picked up the tab at family dinners. But this was no longer about helping, it was a demand. Ethan shifted uneasily in his seat but didn't say a word. Lily smirked, clearly enjoying the show. Henry's jaw was set, and Amelia waited for me to comply. I leaned back and let a slow smile spread across my face. "Then you won't mind if I..." My words hung in the air, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of uncertainty in their eyes. As I drove home that night, their demand echoed in my ears. I couldn't believe they were asking for half my salary so casually. It was as if they saw me as nothing more than a cash cow. The memories of all the times I'd stepped in to help them started to surface. I was 21 when I first took on the role of the family's savior. I was juggling a full-time job and evening classes. Ethan lost his job, and I used my savings to pay his rent. My parents were so proud, telling me I was the responsible one. But over time, their gratitude turned into expectation. The next time Aunt Vivian needed money for a vacation, she didn't ask if I could help, she asked how much I could give. Lily, too, benefited from my kindness. When her car broke down, I co-signed for a new one. She promised to make the payments, but within a few months, the burden was on me. I always told myself that this was temporary, that one day things would balance out. But they never did. The more I gave, the more they took. I realized they had been grooming me to be the reliable one, the one they could always count on. The following week, when I walked back into my parents' house, the same faces were there, as if nothing had happened. Amelia sat in her chair, looking like a queen on her throne. Henry cleared his throat and said, "Everyone contributes according to their ability. That's how our family works." But I noticed that no one else seemed to be shouldering any real burden. Ethan mumbled that he didn't earn enough, a line I'd heard countless times. Aunt Vivian stared at the carpet, avoiding my eyes. Lily leaned forward and said, "Come on, Ruby makes enough for all of us." The laughter that followed was cruel. I folded my arms and said, "So, you all contribute half, right?" The silence that followed was deafening. Ethan scratched his head, Aunt Vivian coughed nervously, and Henry stiffened. Amelia stared at me, daring me to continue. I knew then that they were united in their expectation of my sacrifice. The so-called family fund was a trap, designed only for me. I leaned forward and said casually, "If half my salary belongs to the family, maybe I'll just quit my job." No salary, no problem. The reaction was immediate. Shock spread across the room like wildfire. Aunt Vivian's wine glass rattled on the table. Lily's smirk disappeared. Even Henry's calm demeanor cracked. But it was Amelia who snapped first. You wouldn't dare, she said. I met her gaze. Wouldn't I? If the money isn't mine, why should I work myself to death for your comfort? I stood up, smoothed my coat, and walked to the door. No one stopped me, but I could feel their eyes burning into my back. As I stepped onto the porch, the cool night air hit me. I thought I'd escaped, but then I heard footsteps. Ruby, Ethan called softly. I turned to see him standing in the doorway, his hands in his pockets. He looked smaller than I remembered, like the confident brother I once knew had shrunk under the weight of his excuses. I'm sorry, he said, his voice unsteady. I didn't want it to go this far. Mom, Dad, they just... I cut him off. Decided my hard work was their entitlement. He winced but didn't argue. His apology hung in the air, fragile and insincere. I didn't answer him. I walked down the steps and into the night, leaving him standing there. As I drove away, my phone started to light up with messages. By the next morning, it had become a weapon against me. The first text came before sunrise, we raised you. The least you can do is give back. I silenced my phone and tried to focus on my coffee, but the buzzes kept coming. By noon, I had 15 missed calls and a string of voicemails, each more desperate than the last. Amelia's voice was sharp and commanding. Don't embarrass this family. You'll regret this if you keep being selfish. Henry's tone was more steady but just as cutting. Don't forget, Ruby, we can cut you off if you walk away. Lily even sent a mocking text, hope that big paycheck keeps you warm when you've got no family left. I started saving all the messages, screenshots, voicemails, and emails. I knew it was the only way to protect myself. At work, my colleague, Max, noticed how stressed I was. He asked me what was going on, and I told him enough for him to understand the situation. Ruby, that's not family. That's exploitation. You need to protect your accounts, he said. I hadn't thought about the practical side of things. I was so focused on the emotional abuse that I'd ignored the potential financial threats. That evening, I drove to the bank. I changed my login credentials, added security alerts, and asked them to flag any unusual activity. When I left, I felt a little more in control. But the messages didn't stop. They became more frantic, more coordinated. One night, after a long day at work, I received a call from the bank. Miss, last name, this is Rachel from Citibank. We flagged an unusual attempt to withdraw $5,000 from your account. Did you authorize this? My heart stopped. No, absolutely not. Rachel continued, it looks like someone tried to link your paycheck to a secondary account using your social security number. I knew exactly who had access to my SSN, my father. I opened my banking app and saw the account name, family last name, family fund. My hands shook so badly that I almost dropped my phone. They hadn't even bothered to hide it. That night, I sat at my kitchen table surrounded by paperwork, bank statements, and pay stubs. I was filled with outrage. This wasn't just manipulation anymore, it was fraud. I filed a fraud alert with the bank, locked my credit, and asked for all possible safeguards. I then called Max and asked him to recommend a lawyer. By the next morning, I was sitting across from a tough-looking woman named Sarah. What they did is criminal, she said after reading my notes. Trying to reroute your paycheck without permission is identity theft. If you can prove it was your father, the case is even stronger. I nodded, my throat tight. Proof meant facing the truth that my family was willing to commit a crime against me. I drove to my parents' house with the legal documents on the passenger seat. Every mile felt heavier, but I knew I had to confront them. When I arrived, they were all there, just like before. Amelia sat regally, Henry leaned back with a smug look. I laid the papers on the coffee table. The bank called me. Someone tried to reroute my paycheck using my SSN. The account was the family last name, family fund. Care to explain? Amelia didn't flinch. She looked at the papers and then at me with a cold smile. We're family, Ruby. It's not stealing if it's ours. I waited for someone to correct her, but the silence was overwhelming. Ethan hung his head in shame. Lily gave a nervous laugh, twirling her phone. I looked at them all and said, "You've taken my help, my money, and my time. I thought it was love, but this is fraud, and I won't play along." Henry shifted in his seat and said, "You're making this harder than it needs to be." I snapped the folder shut. No. You made it harder when you decided I was just a source of money. That role is over. I don't owe you half my salary or any part of my life. The illusion of a loving family shattered in that moment. Amelia's smile tightened, and I could see the anger in her eyes. I stood up and walked out. I knew they would strike back, but I was ready. 3 days later, an envelope was slipped under my door. I thought it might be an apology, but inside were legal documents demanding that I surrender 40% of my income to the family fund. There was a signature at the bottom, supposedly mine, but I knew it was a forgery. It was Aunt Vivian's handwriting, she hadn't even bothered to disguise it. I laughed, but it was a laugh of disbelief. I scanned the documents and sent them to my lawyer. Sarah replied quickly. "This is criminal. Bring them in, and we'll handle it." I took the papers to the police station. As I recounted the details to the officer, my voice was steady. When I walked out, I knew the family's silence wouldn't last. Word spread quickly. By the end of the week, Amelia and Henry had been questioned by the police. The family's unity, which was built on fear and control, started to crumble. Lily turned on Aunt Vivian, saying, "I never signed up for this. Do you realize what you've done?" Aunt Vivian flushed red and stammered excuses. Amelia tried to shush her, but it was too late. Ethan followed me outside one day. I told them this would go too far. I told them you wouldn't just give in, he said. His eyes were tired, and his bravado was gone. For a moment, I saw the brother I once believed in, but I knew he hadn't done enough to stop them. The hearings were swift. Amelia and Aunt Vivian were fined for forgery and fraud. Amelia's reputation as the respected matriarch of our community was destroyed. She now avoided public places, and her name was whispered in the streets. I didn't celebrate their downfall. Instead, I focused on building a new life for myself. I signed a lease for a small apartment near the park. It was filled with sunlight and had a view of the trees. Max helped me move in, and my friends from work filled my fridge and left notes on the counter. Even Ethan came by one day, asking if I needed help assembling some furniture. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was a start. Nights are quiet now. I cook for myself, light candles on the windowsill, and enjoy the peace. I've learned that blood doesn't define family. Respect and boundaries do. In the end, family is the people who honor your worth, not just those who share your name.